Good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Is audible, sir.
Okay, thank you. Um, okay, so I have started the stream. I have started the recording also. Good morning, Jaya ma'am.
Good morning, Hardik sir.
Okay, so I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but since the NEP has released, that I'm sure very everybody is aware that the NEP has been released. So the new development is that since 27th, if I'm not wrong, no, sorry, 24th. Since 24th, the government has opened up a portal on the implementation of the NEP. So the policy has been released, but then how to take that policy forward? They have given us, as the public, as educators, the power to um, suggest what should be done to take up those claims. A lot of revolutionary claims have come up in this policy. Some of them we'll be discussing right now. Um, but mostly what we will be discussing is the intention of the NEP, because there are quite a few confusions. If you must have heard, quite a few people are saying that the languages, the preschool children and first, second standard children will be taught in the native language or the mother tongue and so on. So this is not really accurate. So I'll be taking up these things as we move forward. Um, So, just to begin, I'll tell you a little story. So, there's a cave, and in this cave, there are four slaves who are tied up, chained, and sitting there facing the wall. And the entrance to the cave has a source of light, as the openings of caves go. And from this light, whatever moves in front of this light, maybe an animal, maybe a person holding something, whatever is passing in front of the cave, these slaves can see the shadow of it. So these shadows appear on the wall. The slaves take a look at them, and as soon as they see a shadow, they maybe think of something, they maybe give it a word or so on. So these shadows become things in their minds basically. So if they see a person walking, and if they say that that is a man, if they see an animal moving, they look at the animal and they say that this is a deer. If they see the shadow of a tree, they call it a tree. So, whatever shadows they see on the wall, they give it names, they make up stories for it, and so on. And one of them realizes that my locks have opened up. So, that person looks around and sees that there is more to the cave than just the wall and the part that they were sitting against. So that person starts, that slave starts exploring, looks to the back of the cave, and then gradually grows curious. First, he is afraid of the light, first, he is afraid of the opening of the cave, but gradually he grows curious and he goes out. And towards the entrance of the cave, the light is blinding. He can't see very clearly because they have been in the dark since such a long time. And when he looks outside, the eyes start to adjust. They can see the things around. So, first, he is able to look at the ground. He's not able to look up because the sun is up, but he is able to look at the ground. He is able to look at the shadow of the tree. He is able to see the grass. He is able to see the ground. He is able to see the water in the pond and the reflection of things in the pond. And gradually, he starts to relate the shadows that were seen in the cave and the objects that he can now see outside. Now, as the eyes become more adjusted, now the slave can no longer a slave. The person can look around and can see the brighter things. Maybe a fire, maybe a shiny reflection, maybe the sun also. So, when all these things suddenly appear and become, come to the forefront for him, um, he obviously becomes very excited. So the fear has turned to excitement, and he runs back to the cave and he tries to talk about these things to the other slaves. And in his excitement, he says something which the slaves don't understand. He says something that he himself doesn't understand because he is also learning. Suddenly, the world has opened up to him. Up till now, he has seen only shadows, and now that he has gone out of the cave, he can actually see the things that have created the shadows. So, this is going on, and the slaves look at him and see how he is acting, and they decide that he has gone mad. Somehow he has moved outside and he has gone crazy. He has lost his mind. How can objects, look like the way it is being described? How can why is he talking like this? Why is he so excited? And then when this person, the free person, tries to open or release the other slaves, they kick him, they try to shoo him away, and maybe even threaten to kill him. They want to sit in the cave. So what why do you think I told you this story? And have any of you heard of the story before?
Sir, can I say?
Yes, sure.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Sir, the remaining slaves behave in such a way because they were confined in the cave. And what happened when the sunlight falls on the outside part of the cave, the opening of the cave? Anyone who crosses the cave, his shadow is casted inside the wall of the cave, and the people continuously they saw the shadows only. Those were the only biological impulses they had, and whatever three-dimensional structure they saw living, it was only the human beings who were in company with each of them, with each other. When the slave goes out of the cave and sees the real world, he gets the understanding that the things are different, like our hand is seen or our foot is seen. In the same way, the things are seen as a three dimension, and when he enters the cave, the other people do not believe him because they think that he is not speaking the truth because they have not seen the world at all. So they behave like a blind fish which is present in the depth of the ocean, like that, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. So this is
Hello?
exactly what has happened.
Hello?
You want to add something?
Yeah, people don't easily accept anything new which is not heard of, which they cannot imagine.
Hmm.
It's always difficult for them to accept something which, and see any new thing which has come in the world, new information, even if it's a fact, even if it is truth, people have not accepted it easily, and they have called such discoverers or inventors as crazy in the beginning.
Yes.
Maybe because earlier, whatever they saw were just shadows, but this person was the only one who had seen the truth outside. So it's like experiential learning rather than just seeing, he actually experienced it himself. I
Hmm.
don't know. I thought about that.
Yes. So just to let you know, this is called as Plato's allegory of the cave. So Plato had this theory on education called the theory of forms, and it's described in a book called the Republic, which is a conversation between Plato, his guru, so to speak, that is Socrates, and Aristotle, his disciple. So them and a few other philosophers. So the Republic is a discussion between them where Plato describes the theory of forms, which is about education. And Jaya ma'am, I can't see any notification here. Some people have a little bit of problem joining into these Google meetings. I don't know why. So I would suggest that if anyone is losing out on this, they can see it on Facebook. And also at the same time, I'm going to make this available on YouTube. So it won't be a total loss. The only loss is the time factor, which I'll come to at the end. Um, so yeah, so this is about that. And if we take a look at what the parts are, the different parts of or different levels of the cave. So yeah, so the basic level is the level of analogy. So sun, lines, symbols, and this is where you this is where you look at shadows of artificial things or symbols, or they are basically representations. So you don't see things as they are, you see them as representations or signs of something. So for example, instinct. So if it suddenly goes dark, then obviously you will be scared, because the first thing that comes to your mind is what in front of me is so big that is covering me, thinking from a very primitive perspective. And then when you start seeing particular shapes, particular objects, so then they start giving you symbols. Okay, okay, following this shadow is safe, following this shadow is not safe, and so on and so forth. But then gradually, as you start naming them and you start forming a background story about them, like this is safe because it is called this and it does this, so to speak. So then you start figuring out the difference between living and dead things, and artificial things become living and dead things. So the shadow is an artificial thing, and you, based on how it is moving, based on how it is interacting, you decide whether it is living or not. Then when you move out, the fire looks like the sun to you. So bright objects look like they are the truth, look like they are, the actual thing that you are supposed to discover or reach or aim towards. And this we see in life also. We always say that half knowledge is the most dangerous knowledge. So this is what it is. This is where it is represented. So if you see a reflection of the sun, or if you see the fire, and you think it is the sun, if you think that that is the reality of things, or that is the goal of things, in that case you are in grave danger. Then when you look beyond the fire, when you look beyond the not artificial, but the like the false sun, so to speak, you start looking at the shadows of natural things in real form, like not on the wall of a cave or anything like that, but on the ground, or around the objects and so on. So you realize there are some things that are big and they make bigger shadows. You realize there are some things that are small and they make smaller shadows. You realize there are some things that are big but they make small shadows, and the other way around. So there is something that is changing the length of the shadows. And the moment this length comes in, you start understanding mathematics. You start understanding the significance of mathematic objects. Then you have natural things. These natural things are what give you ideas, what generate curiosity, which generate creativity, and you start observing relationships, you start observing the interaction of things, and they help you develop belief systems and so on. So basically, it causes the complexity of thoughts, or it brings about the complexity of thoughts. So this is why people often say that those who are not involved in very basic things or very basic modes of living, like you have to work to survive or so on, uh, only those people who do not have to work to survive, like just to survive, these are the people who come up with brighter ideas, because it requires that empty mind, it requires that boredom, it requires that space. So this is when you realize there is more to life than just shadows and just big and small. And this is when you start getting ideas. And then when you look at the sun finally, then you start understanding the target or the source or the cause of those ideas. You start figuring out how your mind works. You start figuring out how things work around you. And this is when you reach the sun. So that is the idea of the good. So as I said, this is Plato's allegory of the cave. It's a very interesting thing. You can search for it on YouTube. Also, there are many representations, and the book also, The Republic, is something that is worth reading for every educator. So why is it important here? So after a long time, we are now looking out of that box of just mathematics, of just subjects, of just um, curriculum, syllabus, and classes, and so on. For the first time in many years, the government has taken the step to um, actually go for education instead of academics. So previously we used to refer to academics as education, but this time the government has actually taken a few steps to work towards it. Now, what are the aims and impacts of this NEP? So we have finally come out of the cave, but to do what? So 21st century skills and life skills is something at the forefront of this NEP. And the problem that we see today of the suicides and the depression, almost 1 in 5 individuals is clinically depressed, but undiagnosed because we don't have the support structure for that in India, in society. So mental health is of great importance in this NEP. Innovations and breakthroughs. Um, since quite a few years, it's been a normal belief that for India, all we can do is make things cheaper. We have stopped discovering new things. We have stopped inventing new things. All we do is take things that other people do or make and make it cheaper. Maybe due to cheap labor, or due to um, our cost cutting and saving philosophy. But whatever be the case, that is the only thing that we can do in India. This is the general belief. So why has that happened, and what can we do to come out of it? Then the thinking individual. So all this is fine. These things will get us back on the normal track. Like we'll be back on the place, at the place where we began from. We were at one point of time, India, this peninsula was contributed to around 25% of the global GDP. 25% of the global GDP. Can you even imagine? So from 25% to of the global GDP to something like 2% right now, or maybe less. So that says something. So how to get back on track requires all these things. That is the first three things. But what should happen, or what should be ready once we reach there? So that is where the thinking individual comes in. So what should be our attitude? What should be our aim? is just innovation breakthroughs and 21st century size life skills, is that the end, or is that just a platform to launch from? And what does it mean to be a responsible citizen? So these are the main aims of this NEP. And how is it going to achieve all this? So the principles of the NEP are deal mostly with how to execute these aims or how to reach these aims. So the first is sensitizing parents and teachers, because if we have to reach a thinking individual, if we have to reach at the pinnacle of the world again, the first thing we need to do is let everyone know that it is okay to be a free person. It is okay to not be a slave. From the previous story that we discussed, if we see the society today, today's social structure is such that the moment somebody tries to be different, everyone else pulls them down, correct? The moment somebody tries to do something new, everybody else points at that person and either laughs or says that that is not something that you should be doing, and shows it to the rest of the society,
Or calls the person man.
calls the person mad.
Yes.
So this is where we are. We tend to reject everything. So this is something that the government seeks to change through education, and it is not going to be easy because we have so many decades of backlog in this baggage, so to speak. So that is the first principle. Now, one move towards that is flexibility and choice. So the NEP talks about offering a lot of flexibility and a lot of choice. Flexibility in terms of selection of subjects, choice in terms of career and prospects, and because of these choices, it is very necessary to take the parents and teachers along with us in the journey, which is why we need to sensitize the parents and teachers. Then you have foundational literacy and numeracy. So this is something that the government has taken up as a mission. We'll be discussing the timeline for this soon. So foundational literacy and numeracy is the literacy and numeracy that comes till the age of 7 or 8. So that is till third grade. And the government has is on a mission to by 2025 everybody should reach that criteria. So every child who reaches third standard should be able to read, write, and do basic arithmetics, addition, subtraction. So this previously was taken up by schools in a very unhealthy way, where the target was doing this by the time the child reaches primary. So this is the first time the government has acknowledged that no, primary is not the right age for this, to be forcing this. We need to do this in a synchronous manner and synergistic manner, and reach this target by the age of 7 or 8, not 4 or 5. Then next comes integral learning. So the learning now will no more be just in the boxes of subjects. So we will take into account the integrated approach where all the subjects are related to each other. They are interconnected, and there will be no hard walls between these subjects. So just because you are appearing for a paper of say science, you won't get a question from English. That is not true. You might get a question from English, you might get a question from history also, because it is related to the topic that is being taken up. So these walls will come down gradually. Then a disciplinary and holistic approach. So we are not just talking in terms of subjects, we are also talking in terms of the holistic development of the child. So that takes into account the physical and the mental and emotional well-being of the child and the evolution. like physical, mental, and emotional evolution of the child. They in some places have also mentioned about the about spirituality. So this is also a part of those principles. Then comes ethics and human value. So for the first time, we have moved from moral values to ethics and human value. So the government acknowledges that morality is something that society imposes, but ethics and human value, which is the source of morality, the foundation on which morality is constructed, um, it is very important to not kill that. Previously, what we used to do is we used to kill the sense of ethics and human value by very simple things. So if a child knows that these marks, they are there just to get a better job, just to enter a better career, uh, so obviously that sense of morality and integrity goes for a toss, because they realize that this is not important. This is a lie that we have to live through so that we can reach the sun, that of the cave. So if we go through these things which are unnecessary, which are accessory, only then we can reach where we want to reach. So that is a simple thing. Then the second way ethics and human values are killed is the sense of competition, or rather the sense of unhealthy comparison. So the moment you make a child believe that the only way you can succeed, the only way you can reach ahead, move ahead, is by stepping on somebody else. So the only way you can come in a merit list is by scoring marks higher than somebody else. So the moment you teach them this, obviously the first thing the child learns is that to be successful, you have to step over people. So these things the government is going to take care of in terms of policy. Obviously, later on we have to take care of it. But right now, this is one of the principles of the NEP. Then you have life skills. So life skills is related to how you live. Life skills is not your being able to fix a fuse, or being able to grow your own food, or so on. So life skill is related to how you connect with people, how you communicate, your relationships, your ways of collaboration, your living, what you consider important, what you don't consider important. So prioritization, all these things come in life skills, because the rest of it comes in vocational. So vocational is now no more going to be a field where you study to just work, uh, where you learn, say, electrical appliances or fixing things and so on, just for getting a job as an electrician. But you do this so that you do all these things so that it's just knowledge to survive. So vocational is no more just for earning, so to speak, and life skill is different from that. So life skill has become living skills, and vocational has become survival skills, so to speak. Then regular formative assessments. So now, what they have done in terms of assessments and examinations. So examinations. Oh, I'm sorry. Just give me a second. I'll be back. Yeah. Sorry about that. So regular formative assessments. So these assessments will no longer be terminal, like at the end of the year or at the end of the semester or whatever. So they will be conducted in a regular manner, and the basis will be a formative basis. So the knowledge will not just be tested, the knowledge will also, the questions that will be asked will also form new knowledge. So let's say open-ended questions, or open-ended questions and question inquiry-based questions, and so on. So all these things will take the center stage, and if they are done in a regular manner, now obviously the focus that is there on tuitions, on coaching classes, on competition and marks, all this will gradually decrease, because even the focus of the assessments is not just to test your knowledge, how much you know or how much you can perform. Now the assessments have become formative, so they are more concerned with engaging the child and contributing to the knowledge of the child. Then technology. So now we have to embrace, since we are in the technological age, or we have probably even gone beyond that and gone into the digital age. So technology is something that we have to embrace now, and figure out its place in this whole system. So right now, I'm sure, as parents and as teachers, all of you must be interacting with a lot of people who are into STEM kits and e-learning kits and smart classrooms and so on. And the only thing that these do right now in the current scenario is try to animate the textbook, or try to make visual what is already there in the textbook. So they do not contribute, they are just like a side branch of this. So so this is where technology, or the embracing technology, comes in, because now for the first time people will have to explore, we'll have to go beyond STEM or STEAM or stream or whatever boxes we had put for these subjects, and we have to finally think of ways how technology can be incorporated in this learning process, not just as a replacement for textbooks, not just as a replacement of for teachers, but as something that contributes to the development of the child. So that is one way, a new way to look at technology through this NEP. Then diversity and local content. Oh, sorry, that is supposed to be local context. So diversity and local context um, is related to the various things that are around you but are not there in your syllabus. So, for example, we are a school in Amravati. So I am a part of Nivam, the school. So Nivam is a school in Amravati, and Amravati is surrounded by lots of sanctuaries and forests. So we have a lot of tribals in this area who are of the Gond, like they are Gond tribals, and they are very rich in art. If you see the art, it is very colorful, very lively. Then, if you see Thane, so Thane is a place that is surrounded by the Varli tribe, and Varli art, I'm sure all of you must be knowing. Um, so, all these things, along with that, the general people of a place, like if we live in Maharashtra, if we live in say Kolhapur or Pune, who are the natives of that region? If you live in Amravati, who are the natives of that region? Why do we have so much of diversity in Amravati, but when you go to Kolhapur, the diversity is lesser. When you go to Pune, it is even higher. When you go to Bombay, it is absolute. So, what is the source of diversity? Then other things of culture. So how do, if there is so much of diversity, then how do they live, what do they eat, where do they go to pray, what are their cultures, what are their beliefs, what is important to them, and so on. So all this is supposed to be included. Then equity and inclusion, so this is an extension of diversity and local content. So if we have so much of diversity, obviously there will be very different beliefs and very different ways of living and lifestyles. So for example, if you go to tribal regions, that in a lot of these tribal regions, you don't even have beds in your houses, because there is no purpose for a bed. They consider sleeping on the ground is sleeping. So that is it. That is the lifestyle. It's not just because of poverty or anything like that. That is how they live. Um, then they are more in harmony with nature. We tend to clear out nature to make space for whatever we want to do. So all these things are various processes of thought, various ways of looking at things, of thinking about things. So this time we have to take into consideration equity and inclusion. When we teach something, when we approach a person, when we interact with people, we have to take in mind where they are coming from. Then synergy in curriculum. So as I mentioned, so for the first time, we are now going to revise the way we look at education, or rather schooling. Previously, the preschool was completely excluded. So from nursery till KG2, sorry, from playgroup till KG2, that is Anganwadi, Balwadi, and so on. These ages were not considered at all. So now they have been brought in, and we have also pulled down first and second standard, because these are the foundational years. These are the years which basically create the structure on which the rest of it will come up. So it is very important to work on them as that. It's not just a school, it's not just about marks, it's not just about moving from grade to grade. It is now about education. So the 10 plus 2 structure has evolved into the 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 structure. So the first 3 years, that is nursery, KG1 and KG2, plus first and second grade. This is the foundational year, foundational block. Then you have the preparatory block, where it is ages 8 to 11. So that is classes 3 to 5. Then the middle, so that is 6 to 8, and secondary, that is 9 to 12. So here the again what so recently Anita Karwal, who is the secretary in CBSE, previously she was the chairperson of CBSE, um, she gave a very interesting talk about this structure and what it means. So what they are doing is the first or the last 4 years, that is ninth to 12th, they will be taking a look at that from the point of view of these principles. So what should a child grow up with, and what should a child develop by the time they are of this age? So that is where they will be designing that curriculum, or the suggestions for that curriculum. And then based on that, where do we need to start and how do we need to start, is how the first few years, that is the foundational years curriculum, will be developed. And then we'll be moving on to the preparatory and the middle part. So this is how the education has been restructured. Also, I would like to mention that they have taken a special focus on early childhood education. So I'll be taking that up later also. Then, um, then regulation for all these things. So these will be regulated in a light but tight manner. So light but tight manner means, if you are covering all these things, it is very obvious that not everything can be done by the book. Not everything can be done by the curriculum, because these things will change from place to place. The way we conduct education in, say, Delhi will be different from the kind of education that is there in Bangalore, will be different from the kind of education in Belgaum, or say Ujjain, and so on. So in different places, you will have a different kind of education or a different feel of education which caters to the children who you are dealing with. So there has to be a lot of flexibility. So here in these terms, the regulation will be lighter. But tight means they will try to include as many people as possible. So the dependence on coaching classes will be lower. The dependence on alternative education systems, just because you cannot fit into the schooling and the marking and the competition and unhealthy system of education or conventional education. So this reason will no longer be necessary. So in those terms also there will be a lot of regulation. Then research will once again come to the forefront. So research in education, research in technology, research in various fields will gain grounds and will gain importance. They have a different set of guidelines for that. They have a different department altogether for that, or rather they are developing a different department for that. And then continuous review. So all education institutes will have to go for continuous reviews. Go for continuous reviews as in the sense that they will be reviewed consistently and frequently. Then rootedness. So the Indian culture, the nationalistic point of view, the patriotism, and along with that, the responsibility as citizens, all these things will gain focus. So up till now, we have been seeing the kind of damage that is being done to public property. We see how people are fond of spitting here and there, and then we hear from the same people that we cannot do this in such countries like Singapore and US and UK and so on. You'll be fined for it. You'll be jailed for it and penalized for it, and you'll have to go to court and so on. But as long as it's India, it is fine. So why is that, and how can we work on that? How can we ensure that that does not happen anymore? So rootedness to Indian culture, rootedness to Indian citizenship, and rootedness to our responsibilities as a people of this place. This will be the foundation for even becoming a global citizen. If you cannot treat your own country properly, how can you treat somebody else properly? So this is where it will come to the front. Then private and community participation. So as we have been noticing since the last few years, even in terms of Swachh Bharat and Make in India and so on, what the government right now is trying to do is get as much contribution or as much participation from the people. Because if there has to be a change, it has to be done from the people's side. In quite a few of our previous talks, previous Sundays, we have also discussed Tilak's story, where the British, they say that we'll we'll make it illegal for people to for child marriage and so on, but which is considered a very good move by a lot of people. But Tilak disagrees. Although child marriage is something that is not that shouldn't be supported, it has to come from the people, and we can see the impact right now. We can look around us. Has child marriage really stopped? So even though it is illegal, even though it is not even though it is even though it is illegal, it is still harming society because now it is happening in the shadows. So these changes need to come from the people, from the community, which is why they are seeking for private and community participation, and they are encouraging private and community participation. So another very obvious example. So when you look at trains, when you look at government buildings and toilets and so on, a toilet is something that quite a few government people have tried to establish, right? It's just a toilet. It's just a room with sanitization, sanitary equipment and so on, and water and so on. But wherever the government has installed toilet, suddenly one fine day the commode goes away. Suddenly one fine day the basin goes away, and you see spit marks on the walls, on the floor, everywhere. Even in terms of trains, people have actually gone away with blankets, people have gone away with napkins. So, why are we doing this and why is this happening? Is it really so difficult to care for the place that we are living in? And then we complain that this is not something that happens in other countries. So, who is doing this? So, that rootedness is very important, that private and community participation is very important. So, these are the principles. Now, I'll pick up a few of them to discuss the impact that we could be seeing in the next few years. So, one of them is 21st century skills. So, various people have spoken about it in various manners, but all of them incorporate these factors at least. So, you have critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, communication, then leadership and productivity, and along with that, adaptability, lifelong learning, uh, innovation, and yeah, so this is more or less what everybody mentions when they speak about 21st century skills. So, briefly, we can divide them into learning skills, literacy skills, and life skills. So, learning skills will focus on critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. Literacy skills will show, so this is the impact, it will show on information, how we deal with information. It will show on how we deal with technology and how we deal with social media. Then you have life skills. So life skills means the flexibility that you require as in terms of life, because not everything goes our way always. Then taking initiatives, focusing on productivity, on whatever I am doing, is it a productive behavior, is it a productive thing, habit. Then social skills, how we interact with each other. So I'll just take into consideration how this is put together in one of the areas. So, for example, if we take up social media, so in social media, we began with very normal things like writing letters and then telephone calls, and then we came to mobiles. So, the moment these things started becoming easier, we started focusing on the accessory means. Ah, yes. So one very important point, light also means when we spoke of light and tight regulation, light also means that you won't be answerable for too many people. There will be fewer regulatory bodies. So it will be one body who conducts a very in-depth review of wherever the education is happening. So coming back to the social media part, so this is one example. So when things became convenient, when things became easier in terms of interactions, in terms of communicating with each other, we moved on from just communicating with the people who we really want to communicate with due to necessity, or due to, yeah, mostly due to necessity, and we started expanding our reach to actually talking. And the so we moved from work to, let's say, the content of communication. So we started exploring how we interact with each other, we started exploring who can we interact with, and our circles increased, and even our so we probably would talk very frequently with a few people. If we would write to a few people very frequently, we expanded that circle to our friends and family who are probably in not that close to us, and we brought them closer. So we expanded our circle, we extended our circle. Then as things became more easy and more interactive and more new avenues opened up, so things like Orkut and Facebook and YouTube. So the way of communication changed, the way we interacted changed. So now everybody was, along with the competitive education that we had, competitive exams and our concept of success. Uh, this also started becoming a way of success, because ultimately success is something that is reflected in the society in terms of social structure. So this was a direct way of getting a social status. So if you have seen 10 different videos which are trending right now, you can talk to 10 different people about it. But if somebody has not seen even one, then people think that this person doesn't have anything to say. So automatically you rise up in terms of the social structure. So there was always that losing out dilemma. If I don't get it, everybody else does it, then I will be left behind. So this kind of insecurity was always there, and this has led to the the FOMO that has been going around, fear of missing out, and this has actually become a mental health problem today. We are always looking for things that are popular. We are looking for, and we are also driving them at the same time. We look for videos that are famous. We look for videos that are liked by most people. So this is gradually changing. If you notice, a lot of people are dropping out of social media. A lot of people are educating themselves on how to use social media creatively and constructively. A lot of people are using social media now to promote their business. They are now using it for in very productive means. So this is where things are shifting. But why is it shifting like that? Because the moment social media came in, there was a lot of transparency. Suddenly, you cannot do things that you could do and get away with. Any police person, if they beat up somebody because of the coronavirus thing, because of the lockdown, instantly it comes on social media. And then 10 people talk about it, 10 people share it, it reaches 100 people in less than a minute, reaches 1,000 in less than an hour, and so on. So transparency has started coming up. So the moment there is transparency, you have to be accountable for what you do. So we are now gradually moving towards an age, we are moving towards an era where we are going to use social media with a lot of accountability, with a lot of ownership and understanding. So all this comes from critical thinking. All this comes from the previous, the 21st century skills that we spoke about. And the reason why we took so long to adapt to it, the reason why we took so long to understand this complex thing, social media and the internet, is because there was nothing to teach it. There was nothing to support it. In fact, there was everything to go against it. So we had everything going in the direction of competition. We had everything going in terms of unhealthy success, unhealthy social structures, and which led to these addictions that we see today. Addiction to the screen, addiction to other things, um, due to the social media insecurities. So all this is gradually changing. Gradually, people are realizing the importance of critical thinking. Yes, so hence the need for being conscious of our digital footprints, as Jaya ma'am said. So the NEP talks about this in a lot of places, bringing in consciousness in terms of education. It talks about it indirectly. It doesn't use that word very often, but this is something that it supports. Now, this evolution of social media, or evolution, the human evolution with social media, when it moves ahead in this direction, gradually we will discover a sense of stability, we will discover a sense of transcendence. Now you won't be shuffling between people who are against or for, against or addicted to social media. Right now we have people who are like, no, I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on WhatsApp, it's a horrible thing to go on. And we have a few people who are constantly stuck on the screen because of it. There are very few people who are in the middle. There are very few people who are actually working towards changing, evolving, supporting, and handling social media constructively. That will change gradually. People will realize that it's not something that you necessarily have to be against. It's not something that you necessarily have to disregard or insult or disregard social media, insult social media if you are against it. Disregard the people who are against social media or and so on if you are for social media. So these extremes will move away, and we will finally reach a zone where interaction becomes more important. So the actual core of social media will come to the forefront. So this is one example of what 21st century skills can do. So what is happening here? We are exploring collaboration, we are exploring communication, we are exploring critical thinking. Information is a skill that information is a medium. It's just a medium of transferring knowledge, and this knowledge ultimately again will gain value in the human intellect, in the human mind. And the social media is just that, it is a medium. So this is where we are going right now, and this is possible only if we focus on the 21st century skills. Then other key areas, what else does the NEP talk about? So this is the first time that we are looking at terms that have been researched. We are looking at terms that appear in scientific papers. So things like experiential learning, inquiry based learning. So again, inquiry based learning has critical thinking, problem solving, and so on, which are again 21st century skills. Experiential learning, obviously, if you are learning through multiple stimulations, by doing, by listening, by smelling, by hearing, then the higher the stimulus or the instances of stimulus, the more in depth the knowledge will be. So everything that you learn, if you learn about a plant, if you learn about photosynthesis, if you learn about say a car, everything that you learn about, you will be learning in a much deeper way. And if you learn about it in a much deeper way, obviously you have more value for it. So, for example, if you don't study the world as just geographical resources, forest resources, and marine resources, if you study it as the marine environment, the forest environment, and so on, so then things that are a part of these environment will suddenly gain focus and will suddenly seem like they are an integrated part of that environment. There are no more things to use, there are no more things to exploit, they are things to be experienced. So now for the first time NEP is putting this at the forefront, that learning should be experiential. Then inquiry based. Everything that you are doing, why are you doing it? Everything that you tend to do, what is the root of those tendencies? So this is one way of inquiring. Another way of inquiring, if you see that there is a process that is happening, say photosynthesis. So then, in terms of photosynthesis, what is happening? If this is happening, what is the root of that? Where did it come from? So if a leaf is green, why is it green? Chlorophyll is green. Why is chlorophyll green? Because it has certain pigments. Why is that pigment green? So a lot of inquiry is there. We talk about states of matter, right? Solid, liquid, gas. Why do we say that something is solid, something is liquid, and something is gas? If we say that, if we discuss the properties as given in the textbook, a liquid is something that flows. What about sand? If we talk about gas as something that is compressible, what about sponge? So everything has a sense of questioning behind it. Is that definition really doing justice to what we are discussing? Are there really states of matter, or they are phases of matter? We learned about phases of matter in college. We learned about phases of matter in 11th and 12th standard. why not learn about it in school days? Why are we teaching something that is not true and then trying to get them back on the right track? We talk about the atom arrangement of electrons in an atom, that it's a circle and there is one atom here, one electron here, one electron here, one electron here, and that is how your orbit looks. And then when we started studying molecular orbital theory or quantum mechanics, we saw that that is completely false. It's just something that you learned in school which didn't even stand up when you tried to explain the formation of molecules. So why are we teaching something that is false and then we try to repair that as we go ahead? So inquiry based learning is very important. This also has its part in sustainable education. So the education should be sustainable. Here, can you see how much we are spending in terms of wiping the old knowledge, in terms of unlearning? If we are wasting so much of effort on unlearning, isn't there a better way to use that effort? So education has to be made sustainable. Marks and excellence, these are side effects, these are not targets. Excellence will happen if you go deeper into a subject. Excellence will happen if you are really curious about what you want to know. And for that, you have to be given that freedom. So for that freedom, there will be a lot of flexibility that will be coming in. And what we hear about, the multiple entry and exit points. So multiple entry and exit point doesn't just mean that you can quit your degree whenever. It just means that you can take breaks. So even experiential learning will happen here. If you study, say, chemistry, if you have an integrated course in chemistry, you enter into it immediately after 12th standard. You study chemistry for 1 year and then you are overloaded. You are like, I have learned a lot, but what does it mean? How does it feel? Where is it applied? You do it for 1 year, you work for 1 year. Once you are satisfied that, okay, now whatever I knew is in perspective. Now whatever I know the implications, I know the application for it, and so on. Now I can go back and study for 1 more year. So that is how you will have that freedom to grow. Then blended subject boundaries. As of now, everything that we study is in terms of marks. All evaluation, everything has been optimized so that people score higher. We can see the effect. So many people are scoring 100%. But if you ask that person, can you fix a vehicle? Can you fix a fuse? They have no idea. Why is that happening? Because the whole time they have been sitting with a book, the whole time they have been sunk in the books and the syllabus. They have never learned what is there around them. So we are intentionally and aggressively making them helpless. So this is going to change. Things are no more going to be out of syllabus. If you study something, and this is something that we have been following in our school also, if we have an assembly on some topic, there is no guarantee that that question will not come in an assessment. It can come in any assessment. If you have done an annual day on a certain topic, it can come up in your Sanskrit paper, it can come up in your Hindi paper, it can come up in your science paper, because you have learnt about it, right? If you have learnt what is the role of polish on wood, what how does it affect the wood, and what is the impact, what is the implication, you have to learn how to answer that. You have to say, why do we use polish on wood? You have to answer that question. If you talk about Goan culture, if we say that the Goan culture had a lot of color, why? What are they representing with those colors? That can be a question in history, civics. It can be a question in English. How did they make those pigments? We have colors now. We have companies who manufacture those paints now. How did they make those pigments in their days? They have always had those colors. So why and how? This can be a part of chemistry and geography. So that excuse of, ma'am, this is out of syllabus is gone. You cannot say that anymore. Then vocational education, as I mentioned, um, it is a very admirable step that the government has taken to promote life skills, in terms of this, in like vocational life skills, where you can do a certain job by the end of it. At the very least, if you learn motor mechanics, you can at least fix your own vehicle. Go on a long drive, and wherever you face a problem, fix your own vehicle. So this is very necessary for children to learn. Then unity in diversity. So finally, we are respecting the huge amount of diversity that we have in our country, and we are including it, we are accepting it, and we are promoting it. So, languages, culture, history, belief systems, thinking, all these are all these are finally growing, coming to the forefront. And these are things that will be discussed in class. These will be things that are that will come up in interactions. Very few times do you find people talking about religious differences constructively. We are either rioting or we are ignoring each other. So there has to be a middle ground. We have to be able to talk about it openly, freely. If you like Moram just got over. So if you want to find out what Moram was, ask. All of us amongst ourselves, between within our communities, say that अरे वो उनका रोने का time है. We always say कि that is the time when they are not available. Ganpati ka the 10 days are just about over. What was the origin? If we talk about Ganpati, then when Tilak decided that let's have this fest for 10 days, what was the point of it? What was the intention of it? Was it really religion, or was it culture, or was it belief system? What? Today, the whole concentration is on laser lighting and dances, and not even dances done by human beings, dances on screens behind the Ganpati. Even the Ganpati idol is not able to see it. So, what are we doing? We need to figure that out. We need to understand that diversity, accept that diversity, embrace each other. Yes, there has to be a social integration. So, this will come to the forefront again. Then, fundamental duties as citizens. It's how beyond logic is it that if you go to a hill station and if you're traveling in a bus, you eat something and you throw something out of the window. How is it possible to clean that? You'll need mountain climbers to clean those areas. What are we thinking? If somebody who is supposed to keep the area clean, even if we have people who are designated to clean roads and all, how are they going to reach there when you throw something out of the window and down the valley? So it's very necessary that fundamental duties as citizens are discussed, not taught, discussed. Find out where you stand as a citizen of this nation. So this is once again very important. Now, how is the government doing it? So, okay, so the first thing, what is not mentioned here, is as I said, from 24th to 31st, the suggestions, the inputs for implementation of NAP have opened up. I'll be sharing the link at the end of this presentation. It's very, like, you can Google it also very easily. So that is point zero. It's not mentioned here. It is even before and more important than the points that are mentioned here. We need to put in our suggestions for all this. We look at traffic and go, see how ignorant this person is. He's driving on the wrong side. How ignorant we are that we don't stop that vehicle and try to explain to that person why the person is driving wrong side. So, if we have to implement something, we have to start building on that, and we have to start contributing our inputs to that. So that is point zero. please ensure that the suggestions are put and promote it, share it with as many people as possible. Today is the 30th. We have just one more day. Tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. So we have time till night. By 11:59 p.m. the suggestions portal will close. We have, I think, Jaya ma'am, how many do we have? 60 or 70 points?
We have close to 70 points.
So there are around
Under
70.
15,
Sorry.
under 15 themes.
So there are 15 themes and around 70 questions, and they have given targeted questions. So it is even easier to put in your suggestions. So read those questions and try to contribute as many suggestions as possible. Then point number one. So MHRD, Ministry of Human Resources and Development, has now become Ministry of Education, which was there during Rajiv Gandhi's time, but it has now again gained importance that we focus on education, not just human resource development. We are not a factory of people who are contributing to the businesses of the rest of the world. We are a world in ourselves, and we are able to make our own enterprises and contribute to the rest of the world in that manner, not just in terms of labor. Multiple entry and exit points, they plan to incorporate this by 2021, so they're trying to do it by next year. Then the 4-year program, which they are talking about. So in some cases, it will be an integrated program. As soon as you finish your 12th standard, you enter it, and then you do that long program with maybe even an MSc or a professional degree. So this will be implemented in 2021, and in that there will be a credit bank. So credit bank means if I do 1 year of degree from some place, that has to be stored in terms of credit, so that when I do another course somewhere else, it adds to the credit. So now the courses will not just be integrated amongst themselves, they will also be integrated between each other, between universities, between colleges, and so on. So you will have a credit bank which they are trying to set up by the end of this year, that is December 2020. Then these credit banks and this 4-year degree program will start getting implemented by next year in the universities, and probably the year after that in in central universities first, and then other universities and colleges. Then common entrance test. So this is a question that I had and a lot of people had, that if we have so much of openness, if we have so much of like focus on education finally, what are we doing about the exams? Because we can't all of a sudden scrap them. So common entrance tests will be there. And imagine the injustice if somebody scores very high, goes into a professional degree, and then quits the next year. So what about the person who could have scored just that equal amount or maybe a mark lower and wanted that seat in that college? So the solution to that is the common entrance test will be in a rolling manner. So it will be like our GREs. You apply for it, you get a date, you sit for the exam, and then you get scored on the basis of that. So it will be in a rolling manner, rollover manner. It won't be just one exam in 1 year. So this is the plan by the NET, that is the National Agency for Testing. Then, so this should come up by next year. They say around March or May 2021, this will be coming up. Then you have NCF for school education. So NCF for school education will come up in 2021 again, and the NCF will start getting implemented gradually in a phased manner. We obviously cannot in one step change the entire education system, but this will be done in a phased manner. Then you have the NCF for teacher education, so that will come up in 2022. The reason for this is that the NCF for school education, as I discussed previously in the those blocks in the chunks, the school education will decide what should be the level, capability, and intentions of the teacher. So we first need to understand what we are doing in the schools, and then we can decide on what modifications a teacher development program needs. So that is why the school education NCF, National Curriculum Framework, will come first, and then the teacher education framework. Then the government plans to have universal foundational literacy and numeracy as of 2025. So by 2025, we should come at a stage where each and every child, like 100%, um, each and every child should be able to read, write, and do basic arithmetics by the third grade. So this is the target of 2025. Then early childhood care and education. So this will have another framework, another national curriculum framework, um, which will be called NCPFECCE. So that is National Curricular and Pedagogical Framework for Early Childhood Care and Education. So early childhood care and education has again finally gotten a stand as a foundation of learning. So they plan to have that done by 2030. So implementation of the NCPFECCE will be done by 2030. So this is more or less the timeline of the NEP. So now coming to the to our contribution and our responsibility towards it. So this is okay. The link is not very clear. Fine, I'll zoom in. Um so I'll just show what it looks like first. Okay. Yeah. So this is a part of the government site called Innovate India, and it talks about several themes that are a part of the NEP. Yeah, I think this is like reasonably clear. Um, mygov.in is the site for the government where they keep posting new things on your contributions, on ways they want the people to shape the the country in the future. So it is very important to keep a lookout for these sites. So mygov.in is one site, and nowadays it has got Gmail integration also, so you can log in with your Gmail account, your Facebook account, and so on. So we can log into this site and put in our suggestions. So if you, I don't know, yeah, it is not very clear. So on the green button that is there on the top right hand corner, that is register now. So if you are already registered, there is no issue. Otherwise, you can register then, or you can just click on submit suggestion. It will take you to the questions, and the various questions also have the, what do you call it, the reference points in the NEP, in the National Education Policy. So for example, early childhood care and education, this is theme number 1 in the NEP. So then the code for that, like if there is a question that is on the foundational literacy in ECCE, so the code can be like 1.4. So then chapter 1.4 of the NEP is talking about that question. So you can read that passage, that paragraph, and then answer the question accordingly. Answer the question accordingly, like not in terms of an examination, but more in terms of a contribution, like how you would like to implement that. How you would like the government to implement that, so to speak. So this is the page. So as soon as you submit, you click on submit suggestion, it goes to your questions, and then when you click on the questions, it takes you to a page where you have to fill in the details, like are you a teacher, are you a principal, then what school are you from, what UDICE number, code, and so on and so forth. I know it talks about only teachers and principals, but I don't think there would be a problem if you just click on anything, and wherever you have the school name, you can select, like if you are not a part of the school, you can select not applicable. Then where it asks for a UDIS number, put 0000, whatever. So like, try to get your suggestions across, whether you are a part of the school or not. Try to do whatever you can and try to put in your suggestions, and obviously put in constructive suggestions, like not spam or trolling, but proper suggestions. So yeah, that is it about this. Now the link. So the link is innovateindia.mygov.in and NEP 2020 themes. And if you want to search for this on Google, if you just search for Innovate India NEP 2020, you will find this as one of the first links in the search results. So the government is offering a hand. Are we ready to rise up for it? So the suggestions for the NEP was actually my main intention for doing this. And yes, thank you, Jaya ma'am, for posting that link. Um, so that was my intention for this, and I wanted to clarify a little bit about what the government is trying to achieve through this, and why is it so important. So thank you very much, and if you have any questions, we are open for questions.